Johan, thank you for being on the podcast, man.
That's a pleasure, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Coming to us live from Scotland, and we're going to talk about the fact that you are a male model, an actor, and a former professional rugby player. But before we get to all of that, and now your booming career as a TikTok like spiritual life coach, which is how I encountered you, seeing your things on TikTok that are phenomenal, by the way. And I want to dig into some of those. But first, you come to Scotland via South Africa. Give us a little bit of background on your journey.
Well, I came over to the UK at the age of 23.
23.
I was only supposed to come over for 3 years to the UK to literally just play a bit of rugby and do some traveling. And I'm still here 23 years later. It's a long story how it all sort of fell into place. But what happened was I was in the country about 4 months when I met my first wife, and we had 2 boys together, who's now 17 and just turned 16 and 17.
No way. How does that feel, man? You got kids that are almost like no longer teenagers. They're knocking on the door of adulthood. It doesn't seem like that could be possible for you.
It's crazy. Do you know what? One of the things that sort of is in the back of my mind and always will be, I remember looking at my dad once, and he turned 35. And I looked at him and on his birthday, I said to him, "Geez, Dad, you are old." And I'm 46 on Monday. So, so it's the wheel turns, as they say, but I still feel 31.
Yeah. It feels crazy. I mean, to watching kids age and remembering like how old you thought your parents were when you were that age, and realizing,
it's crazy.
This is
because the things my boys get up to and stuff they do. I sometimes just shake my head and go, "Yep, I've done that. I can't really get down on them too much because I've crossed that bridge." It's a tough one sometimes, but you live and learn, I guess.
So you got boys that are 17 and 16.
Yeah, and then my little girl is 4. Your
little girl is 4.
Yeah, she's 4 years old. So I've literally only moved up to Scotland literally at the beginning of lockdown, to be honest. My ex is from Scotland. I've been married twice. So we encountered some problems, and unfortunately we sort of drifted apart. And in the end, we just decided that because she's from Scotland, her family supports up here financially with everything that started happening, it would be better for us to live up here. And we both kind of work down south. However, for us to travel down south to do work and then travel back up, it makes no difference, So, and financially, it was cheaper to live up here as well. And that's one of the main reasons why we moved up to Scotland.
Okay, so when you say doing work, that means, what does that look like? Because I've been to London, I've been to Scotland very briefly. I loved those places. They're just special places. So much history, so much beauty. But I'm imagining you like hopping on a train and just kind of popping down, or what does it look for you to get down into
a flight from Inverness, where I'm at, down to Gatwick is literally an hour, So
an hour flight. Those are quick flights.
It's an hour flight. Yeah. So it's nothing, And if you book in advance, you can get it cheaper than a train ticket. Do you know what I mean?
Is it Ryan Airlines? I feel like I took a Ryan flight.
It's EasyJet.
EasyJet. Okay.
Ryanair is more sort of island based.
Okay.
But yeah, so we've got EasyJet, and there's a few other airlines as well. British Airways that's fly. It depends on where you're going. And then obviously Glasgow and Edinburgh is about 3 hours drive from here. So if you do.
Yeah. So you're in Glasgow?
No, I'm in Inverness, which is up in the Highlands. Yeah, which is about 3 hours further north from Glasgow.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, so it's a 1 hour flight when you have to go and work. And when you're referring to work, are you mostly referring to your modeling and acting work?
Yeah. So what happens is I've got a few agents in London who especially this year, but actually the last sort of 2 years, a lot of the stuff, what they do is they ask you to do a home audition. So you film a home, and then you send that through to the casting directors, and what they will then do, depending on what the client wants, if they want a second audition, they will then invite maybe 5 out of, say, 200 guys who auditioned for the part for a second audition. And then they will pay you to go to that audition, which will just basically cover your fees to get to and from the audition. And then,
how does that feel, Johan? How does that feel doing the remote auditions? You just like set up your phone and it's just you by yourself doing a bunch of takes, or what is that like?
I actually prefer it, to be honest, because when you go to an audition room sometimes, especially in the beginning for me, I mean, I've been doing it quite a while now, but in the beginning, it can be quite intense because you get there and there's 20 other guys cloned, literally looking like you, might have a big beard, long hair, or, the same sort of thing. And you immediately start looking at the guys around you going, oh, he might be a little bit better looking than me, or his beard's a bit more trimmed than mine is, so you start judging yourself and you're comparing yourself to others, but where you're in your private of your home, you can do a few things until you think, I like that, and then send it off. Whereas if you go into an audition and you've got a casting director, they would literally say, right, can you do this, this, and that? And they might film you 2 or 3 times, and that's it. You're out of there, So it's literally a 5-minute process, and they will send that off. And if you nailed it, you nailed it. If not, but now when I'm doing it at home, it can take me sometimes up to half an hour to an hour to film like 4 lines until I'm actually happy with it.
Okay, so talk about that insecurity a little bit, because that's so real for all of us humans. And I think that people that look at someone who has 500,000 followers on TikTok and who is a male model and an actor, and the last person they think is like, insecure or comparing themselves to others would be you, right? But probably the work that you do on TikTok is birthed out of your own journey. So talk a little bit about that, like the either the insecurity and the comparison, or how these kind of messages are coming out of you to go on and serve other people.
So, I mean, the insecurity thing for me personally is, I think that comes from a childhood thing from being in South Africa. Because in South Africa, where I grew up back in the apartheid era, in the 80s and 90s, it was then a very brutal country where you literally had to almost fight for your pecking order in line. If you wanted to play in the first team rugby, that's where you competed to get to that first team. Whether that was rugby or cricket or athletics, there's always competition in everything we did. And that's what I found very strange in the UK. There's almost like no competition with the boys when they started going to school, and they don't compete against other schools in sports, and unless it's a private school, they do that, But the national education system, there's hardly any of that sort of stuff around. So for me, that's where that sort of a little bit of insecurity came from, whereas I always had to compete to sort of try and be the best. And also then once I started going into the sort of modeling and acting side of things, is you probably get rejected 90% of the time, if not more. So you've got to become quite thick-skinned, but it doesn't get easy, even if you get rejected, it's sometimes tough to take, because and this is one of the things why I started doing a lot of inner work on myself, because the more you want, the less you'll get. If you are constantly striving and you become needy of something, the less the universe is like, no, mate, it's not gonna. You've got to sort of almost like in a manifestation way. You put it out there, and then you just start living it as if you've already got it. And then it will just naturally come to you. So
I mean, I've seen that even in my own life, or certainly it's obvious with people around you, when it's like they want it so badly that they're repelling it.
Exactly.
Like,
you can feel the desperation.
Yeah, you feel the desperation.
It's so
Easy there,
true.
buddy.
And that I've learned that very early on in my my sort of acting career. If you go into an audition, you've not landed a job for say a month, and there's bills coming up, and you're getting a little bit tight on the budget. You're starting to chase those things, and it comes across on camera that you're desperate, and you start messing up lines. You're not relaxed, and you're not. It just doesn't come across right. So you've got to. It's a very fine balance. And then it all goes to pot.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that the insecurity, the competing in South Africa, and before we pressed record, you had talked about kind of the way that men and women are in South Africa, or especially were when you were growing up. That the men couldn't talk about your feelings. You had to be strong, have your stuff together. That's probably the nature of all the competition. And then the women were more just like, take care of the kids, the kitchen, the house, whatever. That was the traditional view of things in that day.
It was very much like that, especially for me as a young man growing up. It was tough because I'm quite an emotional bloke. I've always have been since childhood. I look at a good book cover, and if that can make me cry, do you know what I mean? It can bring a tear to my eye. But you would always almost sometimes get bullied if guys would see that sort of side of you. So you had to suppress it. And the thing is, if you suppress all these emotions, it will start coming out as resentment and hatred and things like that, and that's why I think in today's day and age, it is very, very important for men to connect and talk and open up. That's why there is such a high suicide rate amongst men, because of all those suppressions that they've had in the younger years, and they just keep bottling it up, and then all of a sudden, all of that just explodes, and it can be nasty, So
absolutely. I went to a therapist who was very helpful to me in this area, and he said that when we depress our feelings, our emotions, that we will start to feel depressed.
Exactly.
And that the only remedy is to express and release and to share and to verbalize and to get that stuff moving through and out of our body. And it's just difficult for men, especially.
Very much so. Very much so. And, again, for me, when I came over to the UK as well, as South Africans, we are a very religious country. We grew up, especially the Afrikaans side of South Africa, they are a very Christian orientated nation, So when I came to the UK, my beliefs was anything beyond Christianity is absolutely from the devil, it's wrong. But I was so shocked, and my eyes was opened so much the minute I stepped off the plane and I started meeting different cultures and different nations and different ethnicities, and I actually went like, oh, okay. And I spoke to Buddhisms, and I spoke to people who was atheists, and I spoke to people who was Hindu and people who was Islamic, and I was like, do you know what you are telling me is very similar to what I grew up with. It's almost like it's connected. Yes, there's a few things that's different, but it is very, very similar. And my sort of whole narrow focus started to open up and going, okay, I understand what the world is about now, and that's just how things started progressing for me as a young boy and going from there.
Well, you know what? I think that because that to a degree and in a different way that has happened to me as well. And coming from a very traditional kind of Christian conservative type framework, culture, whatever, I think what happens is even Jesus himself was all about everybody and was speaking to the religious group and saying, hey, stop with your categories, stop with your control, stop building your empire, stop making this about a religious, hurdles and handshakes and members only jackets. I've come for everybody. And even in Christianity, sometimes it can feel like we're rebuilding another religious structure to separate people. And so there's ways that it can go wrong when it starts to be about kind of religious performance and who's in and who's out and things like that. So your journey was kind of a Christian background and understanding, and
Yeah.
then so what does that look like now as you raise kids and as you're in this new place and new area? How do you view it? How do you look at God? How do you connect with God? And how do you integrate that into people that you meet with maybe a different kind of tradition?
So for me, I mean, all what I focus on is purely just always coming from a point of love. You know, I always ask myself in any situation, what would love do, regardless of skin color, race, whether it's a woman or a man. You know, I always come, and that's what I teach my kids as well. You know, is to try and come from a point of love. You know, what would love do in that situation?
Yeah, that's so good.
Would it respond in the way that, so say for instance, my son kicked off about something at school and something happened. And I would let him say his piece, you know, and talk about it. And then we would literally go over it. And I would ask him, so if you could go back there and do it from this point of view, how would you have looked at it? And how would you have handled it if it was maybe your best friend that you had that argument with, instead of someone that you didn't get on with, you know, if that happened. And that's my output, or what I try and do, and just to try and keep myself right as well, you know, and sort of make sure that what I bring out is always going to be positive towards that sort of scenario.
Well, even the scriptures that we grew up with, God is referred to as love, like synonymous. God is love. And Jesus said that here's the main thing: love God and love other people. Everything else falls underneath that, right? Yeah. So that's always a winning framework to live by, to walk with. Yeah. And okay, and so then now you're taking all these other messages and making them so accessible via TikTok. And your following on Instagram is also growing, and your videos are so simple, so clean, and awesome. So the reason why I maybe mentioned that you're kind of like, or maybe I can't remember if I did or not, but you're kind of like the most interesting man in the world. Like you got this cool beard, you got this rugged exterior, and your shots, your videos, you're out in nature. I assume now like somewhere in Scotland, right? This is beautiful, picturesque places. And then the camera, comes in and you're like, hey, that's kind of your deal, right? You're like, hey, and then you dive in on this big mysterious principle in life. So talk to us about how you began to go this direction of wanting to share. I have a couple of those videos that I want to even like press in a little bit on, because I think they're great. But just how you started doing that, why that became a passion, why TikTok, what got you going, what does that look like?
So, I mean, I guess with I would probably go as far as and say about 60-70% of the adults or over 30s on TikTok is down to lockdown. You know, why we started doing that, because had to do something. So that's that. I'm not going to lie. That is probably the first reason why I started looking at it.
The COVID lockdown inspired this movement.
Yeah, my intention was never to do that. But what I have done in the last 3 years, really, really intensely, is work on myself. Because I used to carry a lot of anger. You know, my fuse was literally like on the press of a button. You know, I could explode in rage. Someone cut me off in traffic. You know, and I would explode. You know, and I had to take control of myself and go, right, where does that anger come from? Where does this come from? Why is this coming up? Why is this flaring up? You know, so I did a lot of inner work. I did a lot of therapy work, EFT, which is the tapping technique. I went to see EFT therapist. Yeah. And she actually, the woman I saw, she put me in touch with a guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a remarkable man. He's all about neuroscience, and he's a chiropractor actually. And he was in a triathlon accident. A big truck knocked him off his bike, and he broke his back, and he had to get Harrington rods put into his back. And he was going to be in a lot of pain, and he might never have walked. And he just decided that there is if the body gives you life, why can it not repair himself? And he basically healed himself in 12 weeks through meditation. And so I went to a few of his seminars. I went on to one of his two of his retreats, actually. And that's how I sort of really started to find my journey into the sort of meditation side of things, and really delve into the spiritual side of things, And what I started doing on TikTok is a lot of the things that I'm doing is I actually do it for myself because I come across certain situations and things come up and I'm like, okay, what is that bringing up? And what is the message that I am getting from that specific moment? And I turn that into a TikTok, for instance, or into an Instagram post, to just get that message across. If it could, like I say earlier, if it could help just one other person, my job's done, and I'm happy, because it's not just help myself. I've reached someone else as well, and touched someone else by sharing that, and it literally has helped me so much in my journey to just stay focused, and staying on the path that I'm walking, really.
So tell me a little bit more about what it looks like practically. Are you taking time every day, every morning now to continue to meditate, to connect, and then what comes out of that for you, then you're sharing it via TikTok?
I mean, the stuff that I share is things that I've worked on in my life. But I mean, I meditate daily. I will get up. It depends on the meditation that I feel like I'm doing or want to do the next day. Because most of the times that I do meditate is I get up really early, between 4 and 5, because that's the easiest. Because your melatonin levels are quite high then, because you're still in that sort of sleep mode. Because that's where you want the body to sleep, but the mind to be awake. And that's the easiest way to sort of slip back into that sort of brainwave, as to say, because where we are operating now in is literally alpha brainwave. So, beta brainwave. So you want to go down to alpha, and then eventually you want to sort of go into theta, the brainwaves. But then if you can really go deep, you can actually go into gamma. Now, if you record gamma brainwaves, it's literally off the spectrum. And if a scientist would look at that, he will think you're in seizure. But that's actually, you are almost like euphoric in your brainwave patterns, But that's when you really connect to the field. And to get to that sort of state of mind is you've literally got to become nothing, literally just you are no thing, you are nobody, you're not connected to anything or anyone, you are just nothing in that empty space.
Is it kind of like, how does it relate to, my mind went to like surrender. It's almost like a surrender.
That's the first thing you need to do is, if you surrender, that is, you've just got to keep surrendering and keep trusting. The hardest thing about meditation is to shut that monkey brain down. Because your body will literally just go, okay, I'm doing this. And then when it gets agitated and you want to twitch your nose, you've got to, that is literally, you've got to try and get beyond yourself and just keep surrendering and keep surrendering. And eventually you'll get to a point where the body, it's almost like training a dog. If you get a wild dog or a puppy, it's going to take some time to train him, but eventually that puppy will start listening to you. And it's the same with your body. You learn, and your body will learn to just eventually surrender. And you've just got to always just keep surrendering, and then it starts flowing.
So the guy who had the broken back, and then I just view it as God's made our bodies to heal themselves. I mean, it's just kind of the natural way that we were made. And yes, at the same time, we're also dying. And that's kind of a weird, mysterious thing that's happening too, simultaneously.
Yeah.
But what did you take from him, from that kind of propelled you on this journey?
Oh, just the fact. I mean, it's not just him. On his retreats, you're talking about anything between 1,000 to 2,500 people. That's there, and we do meditations together and stuff like that. And He's been going for years now. He's written many books. One of the first books that I read was Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Becoming Supernatural is also another big book that he's written. And the beautiful thing, what he does is, as men, we are very analytical. We want to understand stuff. And that's why, as a young kid, I started taking cars apart to see how does that thing work. Or my computer, the little, not computer, the calculators. I used to take them apart because I wanted to understand what's in there. How does that work? And that's what boys do. We are very analytical. We can't just accept things. We want to understand it. And he actually explains the science behind meditation. He explains to you what to do and why you do it. And the how then becomes easier, and that's what makes it so beautiful, because he explains it to you in that way that you go, oh, okay. I get that I understand that, and then it goes from there. But it's a very interesting concept. There's loads of guys out there that does very similar sort of thing, like Dr. Bruce Lipton, Greg Barden, Eckhart Tolle. They're all in the same sort of range, you see, if you want to call it that. Almost like guru, like teachers in a way. Who's doing the work in that sort of sense,
Well, I've heard the science of the beta, alpha, theta, gamma. What was the last one?
The biggest one is gamma, and then delta is basically where you're asleep. It's just the slowing down of the brain waves, because your frontal brain and your back brain, it's the back brain is basically where the monkey brain is. That just literally talk to yourself. So what you want to do is you want to get into your autonomic nervous system. Because your autonomic nervous system is what wants to repair the body. It naturally wants to do that. But if you can now get into that system, and you can only do that once you slow those brain waves down into that level, and then that shuts down, and then you can connect to that field.
Well, I think part of the reason why people, Americans in particular, but probably across the board, struggle with health so much these days is because not only have we not been, in the prayerful meditation zone, but we don't even sleep. The REM deep sleep is difficult to come by. People have been priding themselves on, not needing sleep or whatever, but our bodies are designed to heal themselves. So how I guess the resurgence that I've seen in people being wanting to know more about, understand meditation, understand connection, how God designed these bodies, how can we facilitate this, how can we connect? It seems to be spiking in interest as we're all getting so stressed and
Absolutely.
out of our minds.
But that's as humans, we are conditioned like that from a young age, because at a young age your mum used to say to you, don't do that, watch that step, be careful of this. So what we naturally started doing, instead of being there, we are continuously now focusing on the next problem, focusing on the next issue. And that is where the problem is. You are literally following your body instead of your body following you. You are almost like,
say that a different way. What does that mean?
So it's almost like if you look at yourself as a let's take COVID completely out of the process, right? And you've got a 9-to-5 job. You will get up at a specific time every morning, say 6 o'clock. The first thing that you'll do is you'll grab your phone and you'll go on your phone and you look at your WhatsApp, you look at your emails, you take a photo of your cat and you post that on Instagram. Then you follow your body to the toilet, you go into your business, you have your shower, brush your teeth, go downstairs, you make the same cup of coffee like you did yesterday, drink it in the same mug you did yesterday, have the same breakfast you had yesterday, you get dressed, and then you get in your car and you follow the same routine path to work that you did yesterday, getting upset at the same people that cut you off in traffic or the same traffic jams as you did yesterday. So you are literally in Groundhog Day. And when you get to work, you are constantly now thinking at lunch, right? So what am I going to have for lunch? And then when lunch comes, you're already thinking, I've got to go back to work, instead of being in the present moment, right? And then when you sort of comes at 3 o'clock, you're already thinking about the bottle of wine you're going to have tonight. You're going to pick up at your favorite shop on the way home. You are in that routine constantly. Yep. You are not living in the present moment. And it's the same as when you go on holiday. Say you've got a holiday booked in 2 weeks time, you're going to go to the Caribbean. You are thinking of that holiday. And as soon as you get there, you are thinking, oh, shucks, I've only got a week. I've got to go back to work in 5 days, in 4 days. So instead of enjoying the moment that you're there, you're already thinking you're going to go back.
Right.
And that's the problem. People are not, they are so focusing on the next issue or the next problem. They are not in the present moment. And it's in the present moment where all the magic happens, and that's the beautiful thing that people have got to get back into.
I totally agree. And I want you to talk a little bit about what that magic is, what the present moment, the power of the present moment, and what happens in that. What's the potential of that? But just to relate, that's the way I grew up. I mean, I am the oldest, athlete, captain of the teams, achiever, right? So I got a lot of accolades from doing things well. And so I just wanted to keep doing things well and keep being the responsible one, keep, driving it forward. And so I used to pride myself in not living in the present moment because I always had one eye on the future. And I didn't realize like how crippling that is. You're never even enjoying your life.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We do that. I mean, I'm very similar, I was in the same scenario, I'm the oldest and always achieving. And so what I've found that is if you're not in the present moment, anxiety and depression comes from, if you constantly worrying about your past or you're constantly thinking about your future, you're making yourself anxious because you are worrying about what's going to happen. It's not even happened yet. It might never happen. But you are worrying about that. So you're causing yourself anxiety. Yeah. And now this anxiety can cause dis-ease in the body. And that's where people make themselves sick, literally by worrying about stuff that's you don't need to worry about. Yeah. But if you can...
Don't worry about tomorrow. Today has enough.
Just live now. Tomorrow might never happen. This... If you, I know it's hard. I do it, still sometimes, I've got to bring myself back and whoa, what are you doing, mate? Calm down a bit, take a few steps back. But it's very similar. The same sort of thing is in meditation, what I do, or what I've been sort of learned from Dr. Joe, that is, when you, and manifestation, if you, whatever you want to manifest, right? You've got to, once you've done that meditation and because you are literally putting signals out, that's what you are asking the universe to sort of give to you, right? Now you are putting those signals out. So instead of causing an effect, you turn that around, right? So if I gave you £1 million now, you'd be very happy, right? And you will feel the joy in your body and you will, oh my God, you'll be ecstatic, right? Because your dreams are going to come true. You can pay for whatever you want. You can go on holiday. You can buy your dream home. You can buy your dream car. There's just not going to be an issue. However, what if you can feel that before the actual events happened? And that's where gratitude comes from as well. So the more grateful you can feel and the more love you can have inside you, and you can keep that, you will actually attract that event to you. So you are experiencing that joy and gratitude and love for what you are going to get, and you stay in that state of mind, you will see how much different your life will be. Because if you change your energy, you change your life.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people probably listening or watching have experienced that. There's other people that are skeptical because they're like, I don't know, manifestation, that feels a little, but even from kind of where we grew up, Jesus said, when you pray for something, believe you already have it.
Exactly.
I mean, just
100%. But you can flip that the other way. How many times have you seen people or heard people who's literally depressed and they go, why does this shit always happen to me? Why does this happen to me? Why do I always get a puncture? Why don't I get that raise? Because you're attracting that. You are constantly saying, and what you are telling your mind is that's what you believe and that's what you will attract. Yeah. If you change that and going, just flip it around. Yeah. That's the easiest way I can explain it to someone is what you put out is what you'll get back. 100%.
It's the same when you decide if you need a new car, right? And you're like looking on whatever the app is in the Highlands of Scotland. But
Auto
Car
Trader.
Max or Auto Trader, yeah. And you're just like, okay, I know I want a black SUV, probably a Jeep Grand Cherokee or an X5 or something along those lines. And then you start seeing them, right? And they're just everywhere.
That's it.
They were there yesterday too, but
Yeah.
now your brain is looking for it,
That's
right?
it. That's exactly right. That's exactly how it works. It's exactly it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's what you put out, you'll get back. So
Yeah.
even if if you're so skeptical and you don't believe in any of this, just change your energy and you will see a huge difference. Just start practicing gratitude for 5 minutes a day. Wake up in the morning and instead of grabbing your phone, just go and say to yourself, you're grateful for your health, you're grateful for your children, you're grateful you've got a house, you're grateful that you've got your health. There's so many things you can be grateful for. And I can promise you, if you do that for 2 weeks, you will see a difference in your life and you will change your opinion about it.
You're completely right. And when I think one of the biggest changes in my life was I went through a divorce when I was like 26, 27.
Yeah.
And then I met my wife now, Hillary, and just a few months after we got married, her mom got pancreatic cancer and passed away just a short time later. And then we found ourselves moving to go be up with her for her final weeks. And then she passed away and we stayed there to be around the rest of the family. And
Right.
after walking with her through her passing and through those final days, it made such an impression on me that I just felt like I want to appreciate every day.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
woke up the next morning after she died and I started writing in my journal things I was thankful for. And I did that every day for a year and it radically changed my life. I think that gratitude is like the gateway drug. It's
Absolutely.
like the starting point to like
100%.
really connecting with God, understanding God, yourself.
Yeah.
It's the gateway. It opens the door.
I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. It's 100% the truth. Gratitude is literally, it's like the magnet that sits there. And if you've got that, it's almost like if you practice that gratitude, you will start feeling love for everything. And once you've got that, how can you feel lack? You can't feel lack, because if you've got that and you're grateful and you've got that love, you can't feel lack. And if you don't feel any lack, there's no separation, to anything or from anything. It's 100% the truth.
So a couple other of these videos that I've seen of yours, you're doing a great job, by the way. Are you shooting these yourself and like putting the graphics on them yourself and stuff?
Yeah, so I've just literally got my iPhone that I use. I sometimes use my GoPro when I go on the water, because obviously if the iPhone falls in the ocean and stuff like that, it's not going to be so much working anymore.
You're going in the ocean up in the UK right now?
We actually do go. We call it wild swimming. So we go up into the locks and we go up into the mountains. We find these sort of called marble pools. It's where all the water runs down, and they
Nice.
Sometimes you get these big pools. And yeah, I did a TikTok about a month ago. I think it's maybe a bit less, where we went out and we were swimming in the locks. I do still put a wetsuit on. I'm not quite Wim Hof yet.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, you do one of these you did on healing, and you talk about how healing just doesn't happen, but kind of the facilitating, being open to healing. Is that from your own journey and your own experience?
Yeah. So again, with Dr. Joe's work, he gets people up on stage who come and do testimonials, and people has healed themselves from stage 4 cancers, Parkinson's disease, blind people started seeing, deaf people started hearing, Lyme's disease, you name it. People have healed themselves through meditation, and that's what you can achieve, because you can become something completely different. And it's again that you can attract that to yourself. You can change your state of being, and that's where I sort of, and it's the same with the law of attraction. It's very similar in that sort of sense, what they talk about, it's all connected. And it's, again, in the Bible as well, it's the Bible that I grew up with said, if you've got the belief of a mustard seed, you can move mountains, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why can't you heal yourself? That's moving a mountain.
Mm.
So, it's just a belief in there. So that's why I honestly believe that, 100% believe it, that because I've seen it, I've heard it, I've seen people go through it.
A couple of your most popular ones that have gotten close to 2 million views. One is on forgiveness.
Yes.
Which I think is huge, significant. My wife and I actually just recorded a podcast recently around the idea of forgiveness, because it's so difficult, and yet one of the most important things that we just have to do in our life. How did you develop that conviction to that forgiveness is a part of this and so important?
So, well, if again, it goes back to this. So let me explain to you in a different way, right? So if you have got, say you've got a grudge against someone, say it's an old friend that your childhood girlfriend cheated on you with, and you hold that grudge against that guy, what you are literally doing is you are giving your attention and your energy, because where you place your attention is where your energy goes, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but and if you've got constantly are thinking about that problem or that issue or that grudge, you are literally giving your attention away. But if you can turn that around again and you can make peace with that, you are bringing that energy back into yourself for your own creation and your own development and your own growth. And that's why and that's where that post came from, because I felt there was a lot of things that I held on to in my life that I was like resentment and anger and things that's happened to me in my childhood. I was like, that doesn't serve me. It's no good for me to sort of hang on to that, and I can't go back and change that. But if I can forgive that and I can make peace with that myself, I'm taking the power back. And that's what you want to do, is you want to bring that power back to yourself. You don't want to be in debt to someone else, whether they accept your forgiveness or whether they come and apologize, or it's irrelevant, and I know certain cases is extreme, because there's a lot of people who's on that post come back to me that has gone through severe abuse and stuff, and I understand that, and I can completely agree and sort of acknowledge what they're saying. But for me personally,
sometimes people assume that when we forgive, that means that we're saying what happened is okay, and we're not saying that what happened is okay.
No, that's not the truth. Not saying that at all.
We're not letting them off the hook. We're not pretending that it didn't happen. We're not suggesting that it can happen again. We're not doing any of that. We're letting ourselves off the hook.
Exactly. Right? You're setting yourself free from that, almost like an anchor that is literally pulling you back. Because if you can imagine, just put it into sort of like a perspective that you are literally dragging 20 chains behind you that is like 10 kgs each, or 20 pounds each. You're going to be dragging a lot of weight. But if you can start cutting those chains off, your life's going to be easy. You're going to have an easier path. You're going to go up that mountain, no bother at all. But if you're going to drag all of that rubbish behind you, that's going to be tough, man. Yeah. It's going to be draining.
Well, absolutely. Speaking of draining and dragging, another one of your most popular posts was around negative talk. Yeah. And how the things that we allow that we say to ourselves, or that we allow, the tapes that we allow to play in our mind, are setting us back, are pulling us down. And it's so
like what earlier. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, so how do you address that? How do you encourage us to break out of that negative talk cycle and focus on what's good?
Right. So it's like I said earlier, is if you keep saying to yourself, why does this not happen? Why does this always happen to me? Why do I never win a lottery? Or why do I never, that's extreme, but why do these things always happen to me? That's the most common thing that a lot of people say, is why do these things always happen to me? By saying that, is you are just literally confirming that, yes, these things are happening to me. Just change it around. Just change it around, because how you talk to yourself is so important. Because how many times do you sometimes make a mistake and you are so critical on with yourself? You've got to be very kind and very gentle with yourself, because if you don't look after you first, you can't look after anyone else. And I say that from a point of looking after my children, because if I'm critical towards myself and I put myself down, my whole energy and my whole persona starts almost like a hunchback. I can feel myself sometimes like, oh, my energy is so heavy. So I look at that and I go, right, this is what I need to get rid of that. And I need to let go of that. And a lot of that comes from the way that you talk to yourself. And you've just got to be gentle and kind to yourself, because you'll see a lot of the comments that I make on people when they comment to myself is I just keep encouraging them to just be gentle and just be kind to yourself, because that's where the whole thing starts, is love yourself enough to do that and let go.
So I think that's a great point to sit on just for a moment, is instead of beating yourself up for having negative talk, right? You want to be graceful to yourself and say, okay, I did it again. I thought the negative thing again.
Acknowledge it.
That's not acknowledge it. That's not who I am. That's not what I want to be about. I'm going to flip that again.
You are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts is literally something else. That's not you. I mean, I sometimes drive and I drive past a truck and I'm like, oh, what if I just did that? I'll be in a massive car crash, but that's just a thought. That's not what you're going to be doing. You are on your thoughts. So, you've got to look at it from that point of view and going, but you've got to be gentle with yourself, and you can't get frustrated and angry at yourself, because that's then defeating the point. You've got to just go, right, I acknowledge that. And that's where the meditation comes in as well, is if you meditate and your mind starts drifting, acknowledge that, going, okay, thank you for that, but let's get back into where I'm now. Let's put my attention on where I want to put it, on the field around me, on the nothingness around me, so you acknowledge that, and you almost become an observer. That's what they're talking about in meditation. You become an observer. And once you can observe, that's where you sort of now go, right, okay, this is what I'm thinking, but that's not me, and that's not who I am and who I want to be. This is what I want to be, and this is who I want to become, and who I want to project myself as, and that's what I do personally.
Johan, your handle on Instagram and TikTok is the man from somewhere.
Yes.
Right? Where does that come from? The man from somewhere.
So I've it's actually a little bit of a funny story, because my accent has changed a bit because of all the acting and stuff I do. I sometimes do have to do different accents and stuff, but also by living in the UK, I've picked up a lot of slang from here where I used to live, because I've lived down south near sort of London for a long time, and then I moved out into Kent. And then I was down in Hampshire, and then obviously I'm now in Scotland. So in the sort of first 5-6 years, when I used to go back to South Africa a lot, when I went back home, everyone back home would say, oh my God, you sound like such a pom. But then when I come back,
what does that mean?
That's the sort of nickname they gave the English, don't they? Prisoners of Mother England. That's what the Aussies call them. So they used to say I'm such a pom, but when I'm over here, they go, no, you're definitely South African. And then a lot of my mates said my accent is a bit bastardized. I don't belong anywhere, So that's
so you're the man from somewhere.
Yeah, so that's why I sort of like, okay, that fits. So I'm going to use that.
Well, where do you go from here? You've got a lot of popularity, particularly on TikTok, growing on Instagram. You're still working in kind of the modeling and acting arenas. What do you see? What do you see in the future for yourself?
So I'm in talks now already. I'm going to start my own sort of retreat. I want to do a lot of work with men, not specifically just guys. It's going to be a retreat for both sexes, but I probably want to try and focus about 60 to 70% of that specifically for men, who's struggling with mental health, who's going through certain things, PTSD, whatever they're going through. And it's a retreat. It's going to be called Discover Yourself. And it's going to be up in Scotland in the Highlands, which will include sort of going on these big hikes that I've been doing, you know, taking them up into the mountains, because there's nothing like nature. You know, it's when you're in nature, you know, that's it's a whole different experience to the body. You know, you are you get tired going up these, because it's all Monroes I do, you know, so it's exhausting on the body. You have to work to get there, but when you actually get to the top, you know, and the feeling of accomplishment, the beauty surrounding you, you know, the elements, it's all factors that's going to come into play with doing that. But then also we will be doing a lot of intense work, and it will be a sort of between a 3 and a 7 day retreat, depending on what certain things we're going to be offering out. But that's in the plan, is to have this up and running by this time next year. At least we'll have a few under the belt. And that's what I'll still be doing, the acting and modeling thing on the side, you know, see how it goes, because that's what's paying the bills at the moment.
I love it, man. Well, I appreciate it. I want to stay in touch so that I can learn about those things that are happening. Maybe I'll even make my way there. It'd be fun to join you at some point for one of those events. And I love the place where you live too. It's just a beautiful, beautiful part of creation. And dude, I just thank you for taking the time and sharing with us your journey, your experience, your passion. And it's been great to get to know you a little bit.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. It's great to talk to like-minded people like yourself, you know, and just getting it out there and sort of helping to help others, you know, and that's what it's all about.